I'm Eva Moore, and I make a living reading minds. Not literally, of course, but close enough. As a jury consultant, I dissect every micro-expression, every eye movement, every fidget that reveals what 12 strangers really think about my client's fate. The courthouse steps of Stockton felt unusually warm for March as I reviewed my notes on the Morrison Industries case. $12 million in damages hung in the balance, and I could already see the fault lines forming in the jury pool. Juror number 7 kept glancing at the corporate defense table with barely concealed disgust. Juror number 3 nodded too enthusiastically during opening statements. Pattern recognition, I muttered to myself, adjusting my blazer against the spring breeze. That's all human behavior is. But patterns meant predictability, and predictability meant control. Something I desperately needed after years of failed relationships that left me questioning everything I thought I knew about myself. Meanwhile, across town at Le Jardin, Melanie Reed was having her own crisis of control. Her sous chef had just quit via text message, leaving her kitchen understaffed during the restaurant's busiest season. The Michelin star on her wall felt heavier than usual as she surveyed the chaos. "Chef, table 12 is asking about wine pairings again," her server called out. "Tell them the Burgundy," Melanie snapped, her blonde hair escaping from its practical bun as she plated the 5th course of a 7-course tasting menu. Perfection was her brand, but perfection required people who shared her vision. People who didn't abandon ship when things got demanding. She glanced at the pottery flyer stuck to her office bulletin board. Creative Expressions Workshop, weekends at Riverside Studio. A moment of weakness had made her sign up weeks ago, seeking something beyond the relentless pursuit of culinary excellence. The next Saturday morning found both of us at the same sun-drenched pottery studio, neither expecting our worlds to collide over lumps of clay and shared frustration. "Damn thing keeps collapsing," I muttered, watching my attempt at a vase crumble for the 3rd time. "Your walls are too thin at the base," a voice said beside me. I looked up to see striking blue eyes and flour-dusted hands. "Mind if I show you?" The woman's touch was surprisingly gentle as she guided my hands, reshaping the clay with practiced movements. "I'm Melanie," she said softly. "Eva." Something shifted in my chest, unexpected and unsettling. The pottery wheel hummed between us, as Melanie's fingers covered mine, guiding the clay into submission. Her touch sent an unexpected warmth up my arms that had nothing to do with the studio's afternoon sun streaming through tall windows. "Feel the clay's resistance," she whispered, her breath tickling my ear. "Don't fight it, work with it." I found myself leaning back slightly, inhaling her scent of vanilla and something earthy. Professional Eva would have pulled away, maintained appropriate boundaries. But something about Melanie's presence made my usual defenses feel unnecessary. "You're a natural," she said, as my vase finally held its shape. "What do you do when you're not wrestling with clay?" "I read people for a living, jury consulting." I watched her eyebrows rise with interest. "And you smell like someone who spends time in kitchens." She laughed, a sound like wind chimes. "Guilty. I own Le Jardin downtown." "The Michelin place? Damn. I've been trying to get reservations there for months." "Consider it handled," she said, then caught herself. "I mean, if you'd like." We worked in comfortable silence after that, occasionally bumping elbows as we reached for tools. When her sculpture of intertwined hands began to crack, I found myself automatically steadying it while she smoothed the fractures. "Teamwork," she murmured approvingly. By the time class ended, we were both covered in clay dust and laughing at our respective disasters. My vase looked lopsided. Her sculpture resembled abstract art more than hands, but somehow we'd both created something. "Coffee?" Melanie asked as we cleaned up. "There's a place across the street that doesn't serve terrible espresso." The cafe was nearly empty, giving us a corner table where afternoon light caught the golden highlights in her hair. I found myself studying her hands as she spoke, noting the small scars from kitchen work, the confident way she gestured. "So you analyze juries," she said, wrapping her fingers around her cup. "What's your read on me?" "Perfectionist, control issues." "Probably hasn't taken a real vacation in years." I paused, meeting her eyes. "And currently questioning why she's sitting here with a stranger, instead of prepping for tonight's service." Disturbingly accurate. Her smile was rueful. "Your turn." What am I seeing? Someone who spent years reading everyone except herself. The words slipped out before I could stop them. Something shifted in the air between us. Melanie's gaze dropped to my lips, then back to my eyes. The cafe suddenly felt too warm, too quiet. "Eva?" she said softly. I leaned forward, drawn by something I couldn't name. Her hand found mine across the table, fingers interlacing naturally. When she leaned closer, I could see flecks of gold in her blue eyes. The kiss was gentle, tentative. Her lips tasted like coffee and possibilities I'd never allowed myself to consider. When we broke apart, my heart was hammering against my ribs. "Well," I breathed. "Yeah," she whispered back. 3 days passed before Melanie called. Her voice held that same quiet confidence I remembered from the pottery studio. "Would you like dinner? Tonight, after service. Just us." I found myself at Le Jardin's back entrance at 11 p.m., watching through glass doors as Melanie dismissed her remaining staff. The kitchen gleamed under fluorescent lights, all traces of the evening's chaos erased. "Welcome to my world," she said, letting me in. The restaurant felt different, empty, intimate rather than bustling. She'd changed from her chef whites into a simple black dress that hugged her curves. "I thought I'd cook for you. Something not on the menu." She moved through her kitchen like a dancer, every motion purposeful. I perched on a stool, watching her hands work magic with simple ingredients. The wine she poured was expensive, smooth on my tongue. "Tell me about the relationships that didn't work," she said, not looking up from her knife work. "Straight to the deep end? Food makes people honest. Besides, I'm curious about the woman who reads minds for a living." I sipped my wine, considering. I kept trying to analyze them instead of feel them. Treated love like a jury verdict to predict. And the men? Always felt like I was performing a role I'd studied but never understood. The admission surprised me with its honesty. "What about you?" I dated women in culinary school, then got so focused on the restaurant, I forgot about everything else. Her knife paused. "Until pottery class." The meal she created was extraordinary. Duck breast with cherry reduction, perfectly cooked vegetables that tasted like concentrated sunshine. We talked about everything and nothing, the wine making us both more honest than usual. "You're staring," she said as I watched her take a bite. "You're beautiful when you eat your own cooking, like you're proud." Color rose in her cheeks. "Eva." "What?" "You're making me nervous." "Good nervous or bad nervous?" She stood, moving closer to my side of the counter. "Dangerous nervous." Her hand cupped my face, thumb tracing my cheekbone. This kiss was different from the cafe, hungrier. I tasted wine and want on her lips. "Help me clean up?" she whispered against my mouth. Working beside her at the industrial sink, our bodies kept finding excuses to touch. Her hip against mine as she reached for a dish. My hand covering hers on the spray nozzle. The kitchen felt charged with electricity. "Melanie," I said as she turned off the water. She faced me, water droplets glistening on her forearms. "I know, this is crazy." "I don't do crazy. Neither do I." Her hands found my waist, pulling me closer. "But I can't stop thinking about you." The kiss that followed erased every rational thought. Her body pressed against mine, soft curves and warm skin. My hands tangled in her hair as she backed me against the steel counter. The cool metal shocked through my dress, but her mouth on my neck made me forget everything else. We moved together with desperate urgency, hands exploring, breath coming in gasps. She lifted me onto the counter, standing between my legs, and for those perfect moments the world narrowed to just her touch, her whispered name on my lips. The overwhelming sensation of finally understanding what I'd been missing. Later, clothes straightened, and hearts still racing, we stood in the alley behind her restaurant. "This changes everything," I said. "Everything," she agreed, taking my hand. The Morrison Industries case files scattered across my desk told a story I didn't want to read. Restaurant supply chain corruption, health code violations, systematic fraud targeting establishments across Stockton's culinary district. My client's company had allegedly been bleeding restaurants dry for years. I stared at the evidence, my stomach churning. 3 names on the victim list jumped out at me like neon signs. Le Jardin. Melanie's restaurant. Shit, I whispered, reaching for my phone. Before I could dial, my assistant knocked. Ava? The defense attorney wants to discuss settlement terms. I shoved the files into my briefcase. Professional ethics demanded I recuse myself immediately. Personal ethics demanded I warn Melanie. But doing either would destroy everything we'd built over the past 2 weeks. Across town, Melanie was facing her own crisis. The man in the expensive suit sat uncomfortably on her office chair, notepad balanced on his knee. James Whitmore, Stockton Food Review. He'd introduced himself. I'm here for an unscheduled evaluation. Melanie's hands remained steady as she poured him coffee, but her mind raced. Unscheduled reviews from Whitmore could destroy careers. His last review had closed 3 restaurants in the past year. I understand you've recently received some attention from certain legal matters, he said, not looking up from his notes. I don't know what you mean. Supply chain irregularities, health department complaints. These things have a way of affecting food quality, don't they? Melanie felt ice form in her chest. Someone had fed him information, probably hoping to damage her reputation before any lawsuit hit the news. I think you should try the tasting menu before making assumptions, she said carefully. Oh, I intend to. That evening I found Melanie in her kitchen after service, shoulders rigid with tension. The dining room had been packed, but her usual post-service satisfaction was absent. Bad night? I asked. Food critic showed up, asking questions about legal troubles I didn't even know I had. She turned to face me, exhaustion etched in her features. Eva, what's happening? The files in my briefcase felt like lead weights. What kind of questions? Supply chain issues? Corruption investigations? Her blue eyes searched mine. You'd tell me if something was wrong, wouldn't you? Of course, I lied. She wasn't fooled. Years of reading kitchen staff had taught her to spot deception. You're being careful with your words. That's lawyer behavior. Melanie, just tell me, whatever it is. I wanted to confess everything, warn her about Morrison Industries, explain the impossible position I found myself in. Instead, I kissed her forehead and held her close. It's probably nothing. Critics like stirring up drama. She pulled back slightly, studying my face. You're protecting me from something. I'm trying to protect us both. The distance between us felt suddenly vast, despite our physical closeness. We'd been meeting almost every night since that first dinner, learning each other's rhythms, building something fragile and precious. Now professional obligations threatened to shatter it all. I should go, I said. Let you get some rest. Eva, wait. Her hand caught mine. Whatever's happening, we'll figure it out together. The trust in her voice made my chest ache. Some things can't be fixed by teamwork. Try me. I almost broke then, almost told her everything. Instead, I kissed her once more, tasting the uncertainty on both our lips. Tomorrow, I promised, knowing tomorrow might be too late. The email arrived Tuesday morning like a ghost from my past. Eva, hope you're well. I'm back in Stockton for the reunion. Would love to catch up. Vivian Kelly. My coffee went cold as I stared at her name. Vivian Kelly. Red hair like fire, brown eyes that had haunted my college dreams for 4 years. The woman I'd never found the courage to tell how I felt, too terrified of rejection to risk our friendship. I deleted the email twice before finally responding with something neutral about being busy with work, but memories flooded back anyway. Late-night study sessions where I'd memorized the way she tucked her hair behind her ear, the time she'd fallen asleep on my dorm room couch and I'd watched her breathe for hours. The graduation party where I'd almost kissed her, then chickened out when her boyfriend appeared. That afternoon, I found myself walking past the hotel hosting the reunion. Just checking, I told myself. Research for a client. Definitely not hoping to glimpse the woman who'd shaped my understanding of attraction before I even knew what it meant. Eva Moore. I can't believe it. I turned to find Vivian striding toward me, looking exactly like the successful lawyer I'd expected her to become. Her red hair was shorter now, professional, but those brown eyes still held the same warmth that had undone me years ago. Vivian. You look beautiful, untouchable, exactly the same. Great. You too. I heard you stayed local, doing jury consulting. We fell into step together. conversation flowing like we'd never lost touch. She told me about her practice in San Francisco, her cases, her life. I found myself studying her left hand, noting the absence of rings. So no husband yet? The question slipped out before I could stop it. Her laugh was different now, more guarded. No husband, never was my type. She paused at the hotel entrance. Actually, there's someone I'd love you to meet. Sarah's upstairs getting ready. My stomach dropped. Sarah? My fiancé. We're announcing the engagement at tonight's dinner. Vivian's face lit up with happiness I'd never seen there before. 3 years together, and she still makes me laugh every day. The world tilted sideways. Fiancé, the word hit me like a physical blow, followed immediately by a wave of self-directed anger. What had I expected? That she'd been waiting 15 years for me to find my courage? That's wonderful, I managed. Congratulations. You should come tonight. Sarah would love to meet my old study partner. I made excuses about work, promised to call soon, and escaped before my composure cracked completely. 3 blocks away, I finally allowed myself to lean against a building and breathe. All these years, I'd carried Vivian like a secret flame, the woman who'd awakened something in me I'd been too afraid to name. Seeing her engaged to someone else should have provided closure. Instead, it left me feeling hollowed out and foolish. My phone buzzed. Melanie, dinner tonight? I'm trying a new recipe. I stared at the message, thinking about brown eyes and red hair, about chances not taken, and time that couldn't be recovered. Then I thought about blue eyes and golden blonde hair, about pottery wheels and stolen kisses and empty restaurants. Can't tonight. Work crisis, I typed back. But as I walked home, I kept seeing Melanie's face when she'd asked if I was protecting her from something. The trust in her expression, the way she'd said we'd figure things out together. Vivian was my past, beautiful and impossible and safely distant. Melanie was my present, complicated and dangerous and terrifyingly real. The question wasn't which one I wanted. The question was whether I was brave enough to fight for what I could actually have. 3 days passed without word from me, and Melanie threw herself into work with the fury of someone trying to outrun her thoughts. She'd seen something in my face that night, a distance that hadn't been there before. Now I was avoiding her calls, responding to texts with single-word answers. Chef, you've been cleaning that prep station for 20 minutes, her sous chef observed carefully. It wasn't clean enough, Melanie snapped, scrubbing harder at the already spotless steel surface. But the truth was, she couldn't stop replaying our last conversation. The way I'd deflected her questions about legal troubles, the careful lawyer words I'd used, the kiss that felt like goodbye. Someone else. That had to be it. Some woman from my past who'd reappeared at the worst possible moment. The thought made her stomach burn worse than the strongest espresso. Meanwhile, I sat in my office staring at case files I couldn't focus on. The Morrison Industries settlement had been finalized without my input, the ethics board complaint I'd filed against myself still pending, but all I could think about was Vivian's engagement announcement, and the way Melanie's face had looked when I'd lied to her. My phone rang. Melanie's name on the screen made my chest tighten. We need to talk. Her voice was carefully controlled when I answered. Melanie, I can explain. Tonight, after service. My place, not the restaurant. The line went dead. I arrived at her apartment above the restaurant to find candles burning and the scent of something wonderful wafting from her kitchen. She emerged wearing jeans and a soft sweater, her hair loose around her shoulders. You cooked, I said stupidly. I always cook when I'm angry, keeps my hands busy so they don't do something destructive. She crossed her arms, like throwing things at people who disappear without explanation. I'm sorry. Work has been... Stop. Her blue eyes flashed. Don't lie to me again, Eva. I can read people too, remember? You've been different since Tuesday. Distant, guilty. So just tell me who she is. The accusation hit like a slap. Who? The woman you're thinking about when you kiss me. The one who's making you pull away. I opened my mouth to deny it, then stopped. She deserved better than more lies. Her name is Vivian. We went to college together. Melanie's face went carefully blank. And I had feelings for her, never acted on them. She's back in town, engaged to someone else. So you're what, mourning lost opportunities? I'm realizing that I spent 15 years carrying a torch for someone who was never really available, and now I'm terrified of screwing up something real. Melanie moved closer, her anger shifting into something more dangerous. You think what we have isn't real? I think I'm falling for you so fast it scares me. I think I've never felt this way about anyone, including Vivian. And I think I'm handling it badly. Damn right you are, her hands fisted in my shirt, pulling me closer. You don't get to make decisions for both of us, Eva. I was trying to protect us. I know, you said that before. Her mouth was inches from mine. But I don't need protecting. I need honesty. The kiss was fierce, angry, full of frustration and want. I melted into her, hands tangling in her hair as she backed me against her kitchen counter. This time there was no hesitation, no gentle exploration. She kissed me like she was claiming territory, like she was tired of my careful restraint. Tell me you want this, she whispered against my lips. Tell me you want me, not some ghost from college. I want you, I breathed. Only you. She lifted me onto the counter, standing between my legs as her hands found the buttons of my blouse. The cool air hit my skin, followed immediately by the warmth of her touch. We moved together with desperate intensity, clothes disappearing, inhibitions abandoned. Her mouth traced patterns down my throat, while my hands mapped the curves I'd memorized in dreams. When she whispered my name like a prayer, I understood finally what I'd been missing all those years, what real desire felt like when it wasn't filtered through analysis or fear. Later, wrapped in her sheet on her couch, I traced lazy circles on her bare shoulder. So we're doing this, I said. We're doing this. She turned in my arms, all of it, the complicated parts too. Even when I'm an idiot? Especially then. Her smile was soft in the candlelight. But no more disappearing acts, okay? We figure things out together. Together, I agreed, meaning it this time. The Morrison Industries case closed with a whimper rather than a bang. Settlement sealed, documents buried in legal archives, my ethics complaint dismissed as procedural overcaution. I sat in my office watching spring rain streak the windows, finally free to breathe without the weight of professional conflict crushing my chest. Congratulations, my assistant said, dropping the final paperwork on my desk. Clean slate. Clean slate. The phrase followed me as I drove to Le Jardin that evening. For the first time in weeks, I could walk through Melanie's doors without carrying secrets that threatened to destroy us. I found her in the kitchen during the dinner rush, golden hair escaping from her chef's hat as she plated the evening's special. She caught my eye across the controlled chaos and smiled, the kind of smile that made my stomach flutter like I was 16 again. Good day? She called over the sizzle of sauté pans. The best, I called back. Later, after service, she emerged from her office carrying an envelope that made my heart skip. James Whitmore's review came out today, she said, her expression unreadable. I braced myself for disaster. Restaurant critics like Whitmore could destroy careers with a few well-placed words. The envelope felt heavy with potential catastrophe. 4 stars, she said, unable to suppress her grin any longer. He called the duck transcendent and the service flawlessly choreographed. Melanie, that's incredible. She launched herself into my arms, spinning us both in the empty dining room. He also mentioned the restaurant's commitment to ethical sourcing and community partnerships. Guess the legal drama actually helped our reputation. Sometimes transparency is the best defense, I said, holding her close. Speaking of transparency, she pulled back to study my face. You look different. Lighter. Case closed, officially and ethically resolved. I kissed her forehead. No more conflicts of interest between us. Good. Because I have something to ask you. That weekend, we returned to the pottery studio where everything had started. Our projects from that first class sat on the kiln shelf, fired and glazed into permanent form. My lopsided vase had somehow acquired charm, while Melanie's abstract sculpture had transformed into something surprisingly elegant. Not bad for disasters, I said, cradling my creation. I was thinking we could make something together this time, Melanie suggested, settling beside me at the wheel. Collaborative piece. Working together felt natural now, our hands moving in harmony as we shaped the clay. Her fingers guided mine, steadying when I wavered, encouraging when I hesitated. The bowl that emerged was better than anything either of us could have made alone. Teamwork, she murmured, echoing our first day. Perfect teamwork, I agreed. Other workshop participants had grown used to seeing us together, the initial curious glances replaced by casual acceptance. When Mrs. Chen complimented our collaborative technique, Melanie's hand found mine naturally. You two work well together, the elderly woman observed. How long have you been partners? 3 months, Melanie said without hesitation. But it feels longer. Partners. The word sent warmth spreading through my chest. Not hidden, not complicated, just acknowledged and real. That evening we walked through downtown Stockton hand in hand, no longer worried about who might see us or what assumptions they might make. When we passed the hotel where I'd encountered Vivian weeks earlier, I felt nothing but mild curiosity about a chapter that had finally closed. Penny for your thoughts, Melanie said. Just thinking about timing, I said. How everything had to happen exactly when it did for us to find each other. The pottery class? All of it. The case that brought me stress, the critic who pushed you to excel, even Vivian showing up to make me realize what I actually wanted. She stopped walking, turning to face me under a streetlight. And what do you want? You, I said simply. This. Us building something real together. Her kiss tasted like possibility and promise, soft and sure under the spring stars. When we broke apart, her blue eyes held everything I needed to know about our future. Then that's what we'll build, she whispered. The Stockton Legal Conference felt different this year, probably because I had someone worth bringing. Melanie stood beside me at the registration table, elegant in a navy dress that complemented her blonde hair perfectly. She'd insisted on coming despite my warnings about boring legal presentations and awkward networking. Relax, she whispered, as we approached a cluster of attorneys I'd worked with for years. I've handled food critics and health inspectors. Lawyers can't be worse. Eva Moore, Richard Stern extended his hand, then paused when he noticed Melanie. And this is? Melanie Reed, my girlfriend, I said, the words still feeling new and wonderful on my tongue. She owns Le Jardin. The Michelin place? Outstanding duck preparation, Richard's wife chimed in. We celebrated our anniversary there last month. As conversations flowed around us, I watched Melanie navigate the room with the same confidence she brought to her kitchen. She asked thoughtful questions about legal procedure, shared stories about restaurant management, and somehow made corporate law sound fascinating when she compared jury dynamics to managing kitchen staff during a rush. She's impressive, my colleague Janet whispered during the cocktail reception. And the way she looks at you. Damn, Eva. I followed Janet's gaze to find Melanie watching me from across the room, that soft smile I'd come to treasure lighting up her face. When our eyes met, she raised her wine glass in a small salute. Yeah, I said, she's something special. The drive home was quiet, comfortable. Melanie's hand rested on my thigh as I navigated evening traffic. That wasn't so terrible, she said finally. You were perfect. Thank you for coming with me. Thank you for asking me to. Back at Le Jardin, Melanie disappeared into her kitchen with mysterious purpose while I waited at the bar. The dinner service had ended hours ago, but she'd insisted on stopping by before heading to her apartment. Close your eyes, she called out. Melanie, trust me. When she finally told me to look, my breath caught. The dish before me was artfully arranged, but what made my heart skip was the story it told. Delicate pottery shards arranged like flower petals around seared duck breast. The colors matching our collaborative bowl from the studio. Microgreens that looked like tiny clay tools. A reduction sauce drizzled in patterns reminiscent of pottery wheel marks. Our 3-month anniversary menu, she said softly. Clay and canvas, I'm calling it. I stood and kissed her, tasting pride and love and the future on her lips. It's beautiful. Taste it first. The flavors were incredible, but the meaning behind each element made it extraordinary. She'd taken our story and transformed it into art, the way she transformed everything she touched. I love you, I said, the words slipping out before I could second-guess them. Her blue eyes widened, then softened. I love you too. We'd said it, finally, completely, without reservation. The admission hung in the air between us like a bridge we'd both decided to cross. "I have something else," she said, reaching into her apron pocket. "I've been thinking about our pottery exhibition idea." She pulled out a small business card. "Gallery Riverside wants to showcase local artists." I submitted photos of our collaborative pieces. And? They accepted us for the October show. "Eva and Melanie, creative partners." She paused. "If you want to do it." I thought about the professional Eva who'd walked into that pottery studio months ago, afraid to take risks, analyzing everything instead of feeling it. That woman would have worried about public perception, about mixing personal and professional life. "I want to do it," I said. "All of it. With you." She pulled me closer, her hands framing my face. "Even the scary parts?" "Especially the scary parts." This kiss was different from our first tentative exploration, or our passionate reconciliation. This was a promise, a commitment to whatever came next. When we broke apart, I saw our future reflected in her eyes, complicated and beautiful and entirely our own. "So we're really doing this," I whispered. "We're really doing this," she confirmed. 1 year later, I stood in the doorway of what would become our shared apartment, watching Melanie direct the movers with military precision. The space above Le Jardin had been transformed from storage into a home, complete with a studio corner for our pottery projects. "Careful with that box," she called out, her chef's voice carrying enough authority to make the burly mover pause. "That's irreplaceable pottery disasters." I laughed, remembering our first attempts at the wheel. Those lopsided creations now held places of honor on built-in shelves, reminders of where we'd started. "You sure about this?" I asked as the last mover disappeared down the stairs. "Having second thoughts, counselor?" "Never." I wrapped my arms around her waist from behind, breathing in the scent of her shampoo mixed with the lingering aroma of tonight's dinner service. "Just checking on you. I'm exactly where I want to be." The apartment felt like us, a blend of my practical furniture and her artistic touches. My law books shared shelf space with her cookbook collection. Her copper pots hung above the kitchen island where I'd set up a small desk for case review. 2 weeks later, Gallery Riverside buzzed with opening night energy. Our pottery exhibition, creative partners, drew a surprisingly large crowd. I wore the black dress Melanie had picked out, nervous energy making my hands shake as I straightened imaginary creases. "Breathe," she whispered, stunning in emerald green silk that made her eyes luminous. "They're here to see art, not judge us." "I know. It's just scary," she finished. "Good scary, remember?" Our pieces looked professional under the gallery lighting, the collaborative bowls and vases we'd created over months of Saturday workshops. Each one told part of our story, from those first tentative attempts to the confident joint creations that spoke of trust and understanding. The artists, a woman with purple hair announced to her companion, gesturing toward us. "They're local, jury consultant and chef, can you believe it?" Mrs. Chen from the pottery studio appeared at my elbow, beaming with pride. "I knew you two were special from that first day. The way you helped each other, like you'd been partners forever." "Sometimes people just fit," Melanie said, finding my hand. The evening passed in a blur of compliments and questions, wine and laughter. When the gallery finally quieted, we found ourselves alone among our creations, the city lights of Stockton twinkling beyond tall windows. "No regrets?" I asked. "Only that we waited so long to do this." She gestured at the exhibition, but I knew she meant everything else too. Later that night, we climbed to the restaurant's rooftop terrace, a space Melanie had been gradually transforming into a private garden. City lights stretched toward the horizon, but up here we were alone with the stars and each other. "I have something for you," she said, reaching into her jacket pocket. The small velvet box made my heart stop. "Melanie, not what you think," she said quickly, then paused. "Well, maybe what you think, but different." Inside were matching silver rings, simple bands with pottery wheel patterns etched around the circumference. "Promise rings," she explained. "I know it's too soon for anything official, but I wanted something that says we're choosing this, choosing each other." I slipped the ring onto my finger, surprised by how perfectly it fit. "You had them made." "Local jeweler. Same woman who made the gallery placards." She held up her left hand, where the matching ring caught starlight. What do you think? I think I love you more every day. I kissed her softly, tasting wine and promise on her lips. I think a year ago, I was afraid of feeling anything this real. And now? Now I can't imagine my life without you in it. The kiss that followed held everything we'd built together, and everything we planned to build. When we broke apart, her blue eyes held the same certainty I felt in my chest. So what's next for us? She asked. Everything, I whispered. All of it, together. Above us, Stockton stars witnessed our promise, the same stars that had watched our first tentative pottery attempts and would see whatever came next. In her arms, surrounded by the life we'd created, I finally understood what home felt like.